I've talked many times about innovation, the best game of all time by any measure that Eric would come up with. So naturally, I'm interested in other games that come from designer Carl Chudyk, and he has a new release at SPIEL Essen 24, Panda Spin, the debut release from Chinese publisher Moongate Design, which plans to specialize in games that feature Chinese themes and settings. This is a 2 to 5 player shedding and climbing game. You are trying to get rid of all your cards to score. There are other ways to potentially score as well. You are playing combinations of cards, so the lead player in what is effectively a trick, although it's not technically a trick-taking game, is going to play some card combination. The next player can pass or play a higher valued combination of the same type. You keep going around the table until all but one person passes. You clear the cards, and then the player who last played leads to a new trick. Except you don't always clear all of the cards. That's really the odd feature of Panda Spin that makes it difficult to value what a card is actually worth and how valuable it is to play it, because sometimes you don't want to play cards. Well, you want to play them, but then you want to take them back. Let me explain. Here are most of the components of Panda Spin: a player aid for each player, a double-sided panda token, bamboo tokens with which to keep score. Each player starts with 1, a deck of 65 cards with 5 suits and 13 cards in each suit, and, very importantly, element cards, 1 for each of the 5 suits. With fewer than 5 players, you're going to deal out an element card at random to each player, and whoever ends up with the highest number goes first. And very importantly, you use only the suits that are dealt out. So in a 3-player game, if you deal out these 3 suits, you use only the cards in those suits. You shuffle those cards and the elements together. You deal out a hand of 12 cards to each player, and then you will start playing. With 5 players, you're going to use them all. With 2 players, you deal out 1 element to each player, and then you're going to pick a third at random, so you'll have 3 suits in here. Now, 13 cards in each suit, 5 elements, that's 14 cards in each suit, but you're only dealing out 12 cards to each player. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But what's very important about the cards is you'll notice they have 2 heads on them. This represents the physical side of an animal. This is the spiritual side. And when you start looking at the cards, you will see that they have 2 halves as well. And when you get cards in your hand, you're going to put them with the white side up. You're going to see the value on the card. It has the suit up here. You have the value here that goes from 3 at the low end up to 2 at the high end. So it goes 3 up to 10, Jack, Queen, King, Ace, and then 2. Okay. You'll also notice a small box underneath each number. I've zoomed in pretty close, so ideally you can see this. That small box shows you what's on the other end of the card. Okay. How you're going to play: whoever is leading is going to play a combination, and a combination can be a single card, a pair, or 3 of a kind, 4 of a kind, 5 of a kind, 6 of a kind, and so on. You can have a run that is a sequence of 2 to 5 cards, and a 2 cannot be used in a sequence. So you can go up Jack, Queen, King, Ace at the highest on a run. A formation, so that could be 2 pairs that are sequential, or 3 of a kind that are sequential. You can have a bomb that's a 4 of a kind. You can play an element card in certain situations. We'll talk about that. So I may play a 5, and then next player plays a 9, next player plays a Jack, and then I pass. I don't have anything higher than a Jack, or I don't want to play. It's my choice. When you pass, in most games, you're going to get rid of your card. You're not winning the trick. But in Panda Spin, if you have played cards that only have the white side up, then you will take those cards back in your hand and you flip them over. You are now upgrading the card. You still have it in your hand, but now it's a more valuable card. Instead of a 5, now I have an ace and a bamboo, which I'll talk about in a moment. This 9 becomes 8 and a water. Is that better? It is. The Jack and the Panda, that becomes a pair of 8s. The 9 becomes a 2 with a fire symbol. Let me talk about all these now. The bamboo, when you play a card with bamboo, you are going to take a bamboo from the bank. So you will score a point each time you play a card with bamboo on it. Sounds good. Each time you play a card with a water symbol, you can use that water symbol as a joker. So I can use this as a pair of 8s. I could put it into a run with 8, 9, 10, jack, if I want to do that. Or you can ignore the symbol. If you don't need it, don't want it. You cannot use water to make a bomb. You must have 4 or more of a kind without using jokers. When you play a panda, you are going to use the side of the panda that's face up. You can flip this at the start of the game or just choose. If you have the spinning panda face up, each time you play a panda, you can choose a card in your hand and you flip it over from white to blue. So you'll get to upgrade a card without actually having to play it. If the other side is face up, when you play a panda, you are going to take 1 bamboo from the player who played just before you. With the fire symbol, so if I flip this up, now I've got a 2 fire. When you play a card with a fire on it, you can discard a card from your hand. So it will help you shed cards faster. So score points, steal points, upgrade a card, discard a card, use a joker to ideally play better combinations or larger combinations ahead of other people. Other cards as well, we'll show some of those. So an 8 becomes 3 3s. So you got 3 3s on 1 card. So you can have more than 5 of a kind thanks to these upgraded cards. These are all fairly straightforward. You start with an ace, you upgrade it to a jack, which doesn't seem right, but now it's bamboo, so you can score 1 point. Let's flip this back over. If you play cards in which at least one of them is turned to the blue side. So let's say I play a 4, I pass at some point, put that back in my hand, and now I'm going to play a pair of aces on top of some other pair. If I play a pair of aces, then regardless of whether I pass or I get played over, I have a blue card that's face up, I discard those cards. In addition, anytime you win the round, because everyone else but you has passed after you have played, then you discard the cards you have played, regardless of whether they have the white side up or any blue cards up. Okay, that's how you get rid of cards. You have to effectively get rid of cards twice, unless you can pair a card with something that has been flipped, and now you get rid of this as well. When you play cards, you must play the same combination as what has been played previously. Someone starts a run, you can only play a higher run with the same number of cards. Someone plays a set, you can only play the same number of cards with higher value. If you have a bomb, however, 4 of a kind, natural, no jokers, you can play that on top of any combination, and that is beat by a higher bomb. That is a bomb of higher value or a bomb with more cards. What works differently are the element cards. You have these. I can have 4 on camera right now. They have a special condition that allows you to play them. So if there's a trick with no bomb in it and you have 7 or fewer cards, you can play fire, you win the trick immediately. That's good. However, you draw 2 cards from what hasn't been dealt out. As I mentioned, there's 14 cards in each suit. You're going to get a hand of 12. That leaves 2 cards left in each suit. So each time you play an element card, you get to draw new cards. The earlier you draw them, the more likely you are to use them effectively with other cards in hand. The later you draw them, the more likely you get stuck with unplayable things. Talk about that in a moment. So here, win a trick with no bomb if it contains a panda, or if it contains a 2 or ace, or if it contains both white and blue cards, or if there are at least 3 values in there. It's a run, it's a set of 3, whatever it is, but no bomb, you can beat it. Alternatively, at the start of your turn, you can discard an element card from hand. Maybe you're holding on for the right situation. It doesn't come at the right moment. You think maybe I'm set to move out at this point and I won't need the element card. You can just discard it from play. So therefore you do not draw the 2 cards. When you shed your cards, so I go out, you look and see who has the most cards in their hand at the table, and you get as many points as the number of cards they have, up to a maximum of 7. If they have more, you still only get 7. And the other players continue to play. And whoever goes out next, again, they look at who has the most cards in hand. They get that many points. You go until there's only one person with cards left in hand. That is the end of the round. They score no points. If someone has 15 or more points at that time, then the game is over. Otherwise, you start a new round. Whoever has the fewest points will go first in that round. I played Panda Spin 3 times on a mock-up copy for Moongate Design, once with 3 players and twice with 4, and assessing your hand is extremely challenging compared to many other trick-taking and climbing games, because often in those games, you get dealt your hand of cards, you're looking and you're like, which ones are the sure winners? Which ones are the losers, the cards you can only play if you're leading, and then you got all this middle stuff here. And of course, it differs depending on which game you're playing, but often you're trying to make a bid. How many tricks am I taking? You got a point total you're trying to do, whatever it is. So you're assessing the winners, the losers, and all this in-between stuff. And yet that changes over the course of a hand in Panda Spin. So you may have this 8 card that then flips around to 3 3s, and you got another 3 in hand. Now you've got a bomb. So the middling 8 becomes an extremely valuable card later. Sometimes you win a trick that you don't think you're going to win. You thought that someone's going to play over that card, and cool, then I can pass and I can flip it over, and then I'll pair it with something else, or give me a 3 of a kind, or run, or whatever it is. And then everyone else passes, and then you discard the card. And now you have to reassess, because you were counting on being able to flip that card and then play it sometime down the road. There's a lot going on with a very minimal number of components here. There's just trying to assess everything. I mean, clearly the fire is good because you get to discard. But of course, first you have to play those cards and get them flipped over, and then be able to play them again after flipping them. That is often true for the bamboo. You just get points, but you also just want to get rid of the cards. So can you do that? You know, the water helps, the pandas help, the large number of values helps. One of the suits is primarily just 2s and 3s of a particular number to allow you to have bigger sets or bombs. But trying to figure out how everything works and assembles together, man, we were having hands very frequently where you're running out and then your hand just dies because you haven't assessed things properly, and you just end up with loser cards because everyone else is upgraded above what you have, and then you're just dead in the water and you don't go out that round. The weird thing about the game that we've had, I mean, clearly I've only played 3 times. It's very much a learning game, but in the first 2 games with 4 players, the entire game lasted only 2 rounds, because if someone has 15 or more bamboo, then they win the game. You know, whoever, 2 people have more than 15 or 15 or more, then higher bamboo wins. But we were playing with the wood suit, which gives you bamboo when you play it. So people were getting bamboo, and then possibly because we weren't playing well, people were going out while other people had 7 or more cards in hand. So they'd play bamboo and score, and then they'd get 7 points from bamboo. And then they'd go out again next time, and there they are already at 15 and done. So it seemed like, I don't know if the victory threshold is too low, or we were just playing too poorly, so we were giving the person who goes out a lot of points. Not sure. I will admit that I saw an earlier draft of the rules in which the threshold was 20 points for winning, and to get that 20th point, you had to go out. You couldn't play a panda and steal the point. You couldn't play bamboo cards to earn that 20th point from bamboo. You had to show out by emptying your hand. That seems like a fair goal to me, but again, it might just be inexperience talking, and perhaps with more play, people assessing their hands properly will have more even footing, and people won't have just gobs of cards in hand when someone goes out. But that was my initial experience. I had the 2 4-player games first, each lasting only 2 rounds. We had a 3-player game that lasted 3 rounds, so a bit more, a bit longer, possibly better. All the people in the 3-player game had played before. But it's a lot to absorb going in here. So let me give you a brief overview of the game, but really if it sounds intriguing, you're going to have to try it yourself to really understand what it's like. Or, of course, I would have to play it a lot more, get much more experience with it, and then I could talk about it in more detail. But that's the initial assessment. A very head-spinning game where the value of your cards is kind of ephemeral. It's like this Schrodinger's box idea with like, I've got something and then something else is going to come out. So you know what's potentially coming out, but again, you don't know who's going to pass when or who's going to play over you, or you'll see someone flip it over and you're like, well, now they got a bomb in the hand. This is going to come out at some point, and so I have to play around that as much as I can, but a bomb can come out on top of anything. When's the right time to play element cards? Which element cards are in the game? Maybe elements aren't even dealt out because they will end up in the cards that aren't dealt. And those cards that aren't dealt are an interesting element as well because, of course, card counting is difficult to do if not all of the cards are in play. You don't necessarily know what's left in people's hands. So again, it adds to the uncertainty of what you can do with particular cards and what the result will be when you play something. It's a fascinating design. It's just, initially now, it's just like, and then it's just static because my brain shuts down from trying to play it. Good stuff.